The endless void of space lit up with laser fire as the Concordate's last defensive fleet retreated from the Void Hegemony's relentless assault. On the bridge of the diplomatic vessel, Starlight Envoy, Captain Park gripped the edge of his command console, watching the tactical display with growing dread. Their alliance of 7 species had fought bravely for decades, but the hegemony's overwhelming numbers were finally proving too much. "Captain, we're detecting unusual signal patterns from Sector 87 Delta," said Officer Bay, her fingers dancing across the sensor controls. "It doesn't match any known communication protocol." Park moved to her station, studying the strange waveforms. "That sector is charted as empty space. Could it be a hegemony trap?" "I don't think so, sir. These signals have been active for decades, but they're only reaching us now because we've never had ships in this particular region before." Chief Science Officer Kim joined them, his eyes widening as he analyzed the data. "These are artificial signals, radio and digital transmissions. There's an inhabited world out there that we've somehow missed." Within hours, the Starlight Envoy had diverted course to investigate, leaving the main fleet to continue its retreat to the Concordate's last stronghold system. What they discovered left the entire crew speechless, a vibrant blue planet teeming with life and technology. "How did we miss this?" Park whispered, watching visual feeds of sprawling cities, orbiting satellites, and primitive space stations. A technological civilization hiding in plain sight all this time. Kim's analysis was revealing answers. This region has unusual spatial properties that bend light and other signals away from it, essentially creating a natural dead zone that our standard survey methods would have missed. These humans have developed in isolation, completely unaware of the galactic community. The most surprising discovery came when they analyzed the planet's military capabilities. Despite not yet achieving faster-than-light travel, Earth possessed surprisingly advanced weapons technology, combat aircraft, and orbital defense systems that rivaled some concordant worlds. They spend an unusual percentage of their resources on military development, noted Security Chief Lee, reviewing the data. Their history shows constant warfare between their own factions. They've essentially been training for interstellar conflict without knowing it. Captain Park made a bold decision, one that might save the Concordate or doom them both. "Prepare for first contact. We need their help." The human leaders were initially shocked when the Starlight Envoy decloaked in Earth's orbit and requested communication. After proving they weren't a hoax, Captain Park and Commander Kim were granted an emergency meeting with Earth's Defense Council. Representatives from the planet's major military powers gathered in a hastily prepared secure facility. "Let me understand this correctly," said General Choi, the highest-ranking officer present. "Your alliance has been fighting this hegemony for over 20 years, and you're now down to your last defensive line?" "That's correct," Kim replied. "The Void Hegemony conquers and absorbs species into their collective. Those who resist are eliminated entirely. We've lost 3 homeworlds already." Admiral Lee, representing Earth's largest naval force, leaned forward. "And if they defeat your last defense?" "They'll eventually discover Earth as we did," Park said grimly. "You would face them alone, without the benefit of allies or advanced warning." The room fell silent as tactical displays showed the overwhelming hegemony forces approaching the Concordate's final stronghold. The Defense Council members exchanged glances, some skeptical, others calculating. "What exactly are you asking of us?" asked President Sung. "Any assistance you can provide," Park replied honestly. "Even a small force might tip the balance. We have the technology to temporarily retrofit your vessels for FTL travel to reach the battlefield." The human leaders conferred privately for 30 minutes, a time frame that stunned the alien diplomats who expected days of deliberation. When they returned, there was a surprising unity among them. "We will join your battle," announced General Choi. "How soon can your engineers begin the retrofitting process?" "Immediately," said Kim. "But even with our fastest methods preparing, your ships will take at least—" "We'll be ready to deploy within 24 hours, interrupted Admiral Lee. Captain Park blinked in confusion. "I don't think you understand the complexity of—" "With respect, Captain," said Admiral Lee with a hint of a smile. "You've studied our history. When humanity faces an existential threat, we move faster than anyone believes possible." As the EII meeting concluded and plans were set in motion, Commander Kim pulled Captain Park aside. "Do you really think they can make a difference? They've never even fought in space before." Park watched the humans already mobilizing their forces, making calls, issuing orders with remarkable efficiency. "I don't know," he admitted. "But there's something about them, a readiness for conflict I've never seen in any other species. They aren't afraid like they should be." Kim nodded slowly. "Let's hope that's enough." None of them could have imagined that in just 5 hours, these newcomers to galactic warfare would change everything. The Concordate's last defensive line hung in the darkness of space like a fragile web. Thousands of ships from 7 different species formed a desperate barrier between the Void Hegemony's advancing armada and their final sanctuary worlds. High Commander Taro of the Concordate forces stared at the tactical display, trying to hide his growing anxiety from his bridge crew. "Any word from Captain Park's diplomatic mission?" he asked his communications officer. "Yes, sir. The Starlight Envoy reports successful contact with the human species. They've pledged military support." Taro's secondary eyelids blinked in surprise. "Already? First contact was less than a solar day ago." "That's not all, sir. They claim they'll arrive within the next few hours." Taro made the whistling sound his species used to express disbelief. No civilization could mobilize that quickly after first contact. It had to be an error in translation, or perhaps human overconfidence. Nevertheless, he ordered long-range sensors to monitor the approach vector Captain Park had specified. Just 22 hours after first contact, space rippled at the edge of the system. The Concordate's scientists and tacticians rushed to their stations as something unprecedented occurred. Instead of the familiar bubble of distorted space that announced ships exiting traditional FTL travel, dozens of clean tiers appeared in the fabric of reality. Human vessels slipped through these precise openings, their engines glowing with an unfamiliar energy signature. The ships were rugged and functional, clearly retrofitted with Concordate FTL technology, but showing design principles no alien engineer would have considered. "They're using a completely different approach to slipspace mechanics," gasped Chief Scientist Alara. "They've modified our technology with their own theories and created something new entirely." The human fleet wasn't large, just 57 vessels ranging from repurposed orbital platforms to hastily converted military ships, but their arrival formation showed immediate tactical sophistication, arranging themselves in a multi-layered defense pattern without needing guidance. Captain Sung of the Earth vessel. Dauntless opened communications with the Concordate flagship. "Hi. Commander Taro, Earth Defense Force reporting for duty. Request tactical integration and battlefield assignment." Taro studied the human captain on the screen. Unlike most species facing their first interstellar conflict, there was no visible fear in the human's expression, just focused determination. "Captain Sung, we appreciate your assistance, but you must understand the gravity of this situation. Your species has never engaged in space combat before. Perhaps a supporting position would be—" "With respect, Commander," Sung interrupted. "We've studied the hegemony battle reports during our transit. We request forward deployment. Our vessels are more maneuverable than yours, and we've developed several tactical approaches we believe will be effective." The audacity stunned Taro and his officers. Before he could respond, another communication came through, this time from Major Choi, commander of the human ground forces. "Our drop teams are prepped for boarding actions," she reported matter-of-factly. "We've analyzed hegemony vessel schematics and identified optimal entry points for their command ships." "Boarding actions?" Taro couldn't hide his shock. "That's suicide against hegemony defenses." Major Choi just smiled slightly. "We have some tricks up our sleeves." Throughout the next few hours, the Concordate leadership watched in fascination as the humans prepared for battle with an efficiency that defied understanding. While other species required extensive psychological preparation before combat, the humans seemed to slip into battle readiness with practiced ease. In the observation deck of the Concordat flagship, Security Officer Jin from Earth explained to a group of alien officers, "Our species has fought wars continuously throughout our history. While we've learned to live peacefully among ourselves in recent decades, we've never lost our capacity for warfare." "But how can your soldiers be so calm?" asked a Medusan officer, her tendrils twitching with anxiety. "They face death in an unknown environment against a superior enemy." "That's what humans do," Jin replied simply. "We adapt, we overcome. It's kind of our thing." The aliens observed as human troops checked their equipment with practiced precision. Many carried traditional, projectile weapons alongside energy weapons provided by the Concordat. "Why bring such primitive armaments?" asked a Vorican commander. Lieutenant Kang demonstrated by disassembling and reassembling his rifle in seconds. "Reliable, works in all environments, doesn't rely on energy cells that can be depleted or jammed. Sometimes the old ways are still effective." As the massive hegemony fleet appeared on long-range sensors, the Concordat command staff finalized battle plans with their human counterparts. Fleet Commander Han reviewed the tactical projections with High Commander Taro. "Your strategy is unorthodox," Taro admitted, studying the battle simulations. Han nodded. "The hegemony expects conventional resistance. Their tactics show they've grown accustomed to fighting opponents who follow predictable patterns. We don't intend to be predictable." "And you believe this will work?" asked Taro skeptically. "I believe we can create enough chaos in their formations to expose weaknesses. After that, your more powerful ships can exploit those openings." As final preparations were made, Communications Officer Bay approached Han with an urgent message from Earth. "Sir, additional human forces have completed their retrofitting and will arrive in 6 hours." Han shook his head. "Tell them not to bother. This will be over in 5. Taro overheard this exchange and stared at the human commander in disbelief. 5 hours? Against the largest hegemony fleet ever assembled? Han met the alien commander's compound eyes with a steady gaze. 5 hours. That's all we need. As the hegemony ships began their approach, the human vessels took their positions at the front of the Concordat line. Nobody in the galactic community had ever seen such a small force volunteer to face such overwhelming odds. The battle for the survival of 8 species was about to begin. The Void Hegemony fleet approached in perfect formation, thousands of biomechanical ships arranged in the traditional spearhead pattern that had broken planetary defenses across 3 galactic sectors. Their hive-minded commanders were already calculating victory probabilities, expecting the same desperate but ultimately futile resistance they'd encountered from every Concordat world. What they didn't expect was Lieutenant Kang's voice crackling across all communication channels. "Attention Hegemony Fleet, we are the human species of Earth. You have exactly 1 opportunity to withdraw from Concordat space. This offer expires in 30 seconds. The Hegemony didn't bother responding, their forward batteries charged, preparing the opening salvo that would begin the final battle for the Concordat's last stronghold. "Well, we tried diplomacy," Kang said with a shrug to his bridge crew. "Battle Plan Thunderstrike is a go. All ships, execute." The small human fleet suddenly broke formation, their ships accelerating at rates that stressed even their reinforced hulls. Instead of maintaining the defensive line the Hegemony expected, the Earth vessels scattered in seemingly random directions. On the Concordat flagship, High Commander Taro watched in horror. "What are they doing? They've broken the line." Strategist Yoon, the human liaison officer assigned to Taro's ship, remained calm. "Watch." The human vessels didn't retreat. Instead, they drove straight toward the Hegemony formation, but not as a unified attack force. Each ship charted its own erratic course, weaving between the massive enemy vessels with reckless precision. "This is madness," gasped a Concordat tactical officer. "They'll be surrounded and destroyed individually." Yoon pointed to the tactical display. "That's exactly what we want them to think." The Hegemony commanders, faced with this unexpected behavior, did what they had always done. They adapted their perfect formation to surround and eliminate the fragmented attackers. Their massive fleet began to divide, opening small gaps in their previously impenetrable wall of ships. Aboard the Earth vessel Defiant, Captain Ju's voice was steady as she navigated her ship into the heart of the enemy formation. Defensive, countermeasures at full. Prepare strike packages on my mark. The Defiant twisted between enemy fire with maneuvers that would have torn apart most ships, the crew working with practiced coordination despite the crushing G-forces. When the ship reached its designated position, surrounded by hegemony vessels on all sides, Ju gave the command. Deploy sunbursts. From the Defiant and every other human ship came a burst of specially designed projectiles. Not the simple missiles the hegemony expected, but Engineer Moon's creation. Devices that created localized sensor blackouts across the enemy fleet. "They're blinding us," screamed a hegemony sub-commander as ship after ship lost tactical awareness of its surroundings. In that moment of confusion, the second phase began. From the hulls of the human vessels, smaller craft detached, dropships carrying Colonel Ju's boarding teams. These craft, barely larger than shuttles and coated with experimental stealth materials, slipped through the gaps in the hegemony sensors toward their primary targets. On the Concordat command ship, Taro watched in astonishment. "They're boarding the hegemony vessels? That's never been successfully done before." Yoon nodded. "The hegemony has never faced humans before." Inside one of the dropships, Major Shin briefed her team one final time as they approached a hegemony command vessel. "Remember your training. Their internal defenses expect conventional attacks. Stay unpredictable, stay aggressive, and keep moving." When the dropships attached to the hulls of the massive hegemony vessels, they didn't attempt to breach at airlocks or docking ports where defenses would be strongest. Instead, they deployed specialized cutting tools to create their own entrances at structural weak points identified from captured hegemony schematics. The boarding teams poured into the enemy ships wearing combat exoskeletons that amplified their already considerable strength. Armed with both energy weapons and traditional ballistic firearms, they moved through the corridors in patterns that bewildered the hegemony's internal defense systems. "They're not following any known boarding protocol," reported a hegemony security officer. "They're splitting into small teams and hitting multiple systems simultaneously." The human approach to ship-to-ship combat proved devastating. While the hegemony had developed countermeasures for every conventional boarding strategy, they had never encountered an enemy that combined methodical tactical precision with seemingly chaotic individual actions. Back in space, the battle continued to evolve. The human ships, having successfully delivered their boarding parties, began Phase 3 of their plan. Instead of attempting to destroy the much larger hegemony vessels directly, they targeted specific external systems, weapons arrays, sensor, nodes, and propulsion vents, using precisely calculated strikes that caused cascading failures throughout the enemy ships. "They're not trying to destroy our vessels," realized a hegemony commander. "They're crippling them." On the Concordat flagship, Taro finally understood the human strategy. "They're creating openings for our main fleet." Yoon nodded. "Now would be a good time to order your attack vessels forward, Commander." Taro hesitated, only briefly before giving the command. The Concordat's heavier battleships, which had been holding back in defensive positions, surged forward to exploit the growing disarray in the hegemony formation. Meanwhile, inside the hegemony ships, the human boarding teams reached their primary objectives. Tech specialist Han connected portable devices to the enemy's command systems. "Package deployed," she reported through her tactical comm. "Beginning data extraction and virus upload." The device she planted wasn't just gathering intelligence, it was introducing a uniquely human creation into the hegemony's interconnected fleet network. An adaptive computer virus designed to corrupt their coordination systems. Within an hour of engagement, the perfectly organized hegemony fleet was in growing disarray. Ships that should have been supporting each other were firing into empty space or, in some cases, targeting their own vessels due to corrupted targeting data. From the bridge of his flagship, Fleet Commander Han watched the hegemony's confusion with grim satisfaction. "Begin Phase 4, he ordered. "All ships, convergence pattern Delta. Let's show them what coordinated actually means." The scattered human vessels suddenly reversed course, coming together in a tight formation that sliced through the now disorganized enemy fleet like a spear. Behind them, the Concordate's heavy battleships followed the path they created, delivering devastating fire to the exposed enemy vessels. For the first time in decades of war, the Void hegemony was on the defensive, all because of a species they hadn't known existed 3 days earlier. 3 hours into the battle, the massive view screens on the Concordate command ship showed something no one had witnessed in decades: the Void hegemony in retreat. Not a full withdrawal yet, but their perfect formations had collapsed into defensive clusters as they struggled to counter the combined human and Concordate assault. "I don't understand," said Sub-Commander Nelix, a veteran of 17 major engagements against the hegemony. "We've fought them with greater numbers and more advanced ships, yet never achieved this kind of breakthrough. What are these humans doing differently?" High Commander Taro studied the tactical displays where human vessels continued their seemingly erratic, yet devastatingly effective maneuvers. "It's not their technology, it's them." In the heart of the conflict, Captain Ryu's ship Indomitable executed a tight spiral between 3 hegemony destroyers, drawing their fire while 2 Concordate cruisers moved in to deliver killing blows from behind. Ryu's bridge crew worked with practiced precision despite the violent maneuvers throwing them against their restraints. "Damage report," Ryu called out as the ship shuddered from a glancing hit. "Port shields at 40%. Minor hull breach." "On deck 4, responded his tactical officer. "Repair teams already responding." Ryu nodded calmly. "Execute attack pattern horizon. Let's give our Concordate friends another opening." What amazed the alien observers was not just the daring of the human tactics but the crew's reaction to them. Where most species showed signs of combat stress, trembling appendages, elevated respiration, hesitation in decision-making, the humans seemed to become more focused, more present in the chaos of battle. Meanwhile, inside the captured hegemony, Command Ship Specialist Nam's psychological warfare team had achieved their primary objective. Having fought their way to the central communication hub, they were now broadcasting carefully crafted misinformation throughout the enemy fleet. "Vulnerability detected in Sector 8. All ships withdraw and regroup." Nam's voice went out, perfectly, mimicking the tonal patterns of hegemony commanders. The beauty of the deception was its subtlety. Not all commands were false, creating a confusing mixture of legitimate and misleading orders that the enemy couldn't easily filter. In another section of the same ship, Tech Officer Jin had plugged directly into the hegemony's tactical network. Her fingers flew across her portable interface as she injected contradictory data into their targeting systems. "Their network architecture is fascinating," she commented to her security team, who were holding off waves of hegemony defenders. "Highly efficient but utterly rigid. They never expected someone to attack it from the inside." "Less admiring, more hacking," grunted Sergeant Park as he fired another burst down the corridor. Jin smiled without looking up from her work. "Already done. Their flagship thinks half their fleet has been destroyed. They're about to order a major repositioning." Across the battlefield, the hegemony forces began a confused reorganization, responding to phantom threats and incorrect damage assessments. Ships that should have been supporting each other pulled away, creating gaps that the combined human Concordate forces immediately exploited. On the Concordate command ship, their intelligence division was making a disturbing discovery. Chief Analyst Mira had been studying historical data downloaded from Earth's networks during their brief contact. "Commander Taro, you need to see this," she said, her voice betraying her shock. Taro joined her at the analysis station, where screens displayed human historical records, wars, battles, conflicts spanning their entire recorded history. "Is this accurate?" he asked, his compound eyes widening. "They've fought over 20,000 documented wars among their own kind?" "Yes," confirmed Mira. "And that's just the organized conflicts. Their history shows nearly continuous warfare, somewhere on their planet at any given time." Taro's secondary breathing vents fluttered in distress. "We thought they were just another spacefaring species, but they're battle-forged," said General Quan, who had been quietly listening nearby. The human officer had been assigned as military liaison to the Concordat High Command. Every tactic we're using today was developed and tested through centuries of conflict on our world. But how do your people function with such violence in your nature? Asked Mira, not accusingly but with genuine curiosity. Quan considered the question carefully. The same drive that pushed us to fight each other also drove us to create art, explore our world, and eventually reach for the stars. We contain multitudes, the capacity for both extraordinary destruction and remarkable creation. On the tactical displays, the battle continued to turn in their favor. The human boarding parties had now secured key systems on 7 major hegemony vessels. Rather than destroying these ships, they were systematically taking control of them. Your people fight with a ferocity we've never encountered, Taro observed. Even the hegemony, for all their brutality, wage war with predictable logic. Your soldiers seem to embrace the chaos of battle. Humans don't just adapt to chaos, Quan explained. We thrive in it. Throughout our evolution, those who could make rapid decisions under extreme stress survived. We've been unconsciously selecting for combat effectiveness for thousands of generations. In the battlefield beyond, a perfect example of this adaptation was unfolding. A human dropship had been damaged during its approach to a hegemony cruiser. Rather than abort the mission, Lieutenant Bay had ordered her team to use their emergency thruster packs to continue the approach manually, essentially performing a spacewalk through active combat zones to reach their target. Now, inside the enemy vessel, Bay's team moved with coordinated precision despite being half their original number. We've reached the engine control room, she reported back to Fleet Command. Beginning override sequence. The hegemony defenders fought desperately, but they couldn't match the humans' tactical flexibility. When conventional approaches failed, the boarding team improvised, using environmental systems, maintenance tunnels, and even the ship's own internal transport mechanisms in ways their designers never intended. They're not just warriors, Mira said quietly to Taro as they watched the battle unfold. They're predators. Taro nodded slowly. And thankfully they're on our side. As the 4th hour of battle approached, the hegemony's remaining command structure finally recognized the full extent of the threat. Their perfectly coordinated fleet had been reduced to individual ships fighting for survival against an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. A priority communication from the hegemony supreme commander echoed through their remaining vessels. All forces, disengage and withdraw to fallback position Delta. Prepare for emergency slipspace transit. For the first time in the decades-long war, the void hegemony was running away, and they had a single species to thank for it, one that until 3 days ago they hadn't known existed. The last hegemony vessels flickered and disappeared into slipspace, leaving behind the wreckage of hundreds of their ships scattered across the battlefield. Aboard the Concordat flagship, a moment of stunned silence gave way to eruptions of joy. Species that had faced extinction mere hours ago now celebrated with their unique expressions of relief. Harmonic singing from the Melusians, light displays from the crystalline Vordax, and the rhythmic stomping of Garathi warriors. High Commander Taro stood silent at the command viewport, still processing what he had witnessed. Behind him, Captain Sung approached with Fleet Commander Han. 4 hours and 53 minutes, said Han, checking his timepiece. I promised you 5 hours. Taro turned, his compound eyes focusing on the humans. You've done the impossible. We've fought the hegemony for 23 years and never achieved a victory this decisive. Around them, damage reports and casualty counts were coming in. The Concordat had lost ships, yes, but a fraction of what they had expected. The human forces had suffered proportionally higher losses. 11 vessels destroyed and over 200 personnel killed. But compared to the scale of the victory, these numbers were miraculously low. Commander Wan has something you should see, Sung said, gesturing to a tall woman entering the command center with a data pad. Wan nodded respectfully to Taro. Before I explain our next steps, I should inform you that we've captured 6 hegemony command vessels intact, including their strategic planning systems. Next steps? Taro's antennae twitched in confusion. The battle is over. The battle is over, Juan agreed. But not the war. She activated her datapad, projecting a holographic display showing hundreds of small dots moving away from the battlefield. These are quantum tracking devices that our boarding teams planted throughout the retreating hegemony fleet. Taro stared at the display, not quite comprehending. You placed trackers on their vessels during combat? It was part of our strategy. From the beginning, explained Han. Victory today means nothing if they simply regroup and return with greater numbers. These trackers will lead us to every major hegemony base, supply depot, and manufacturing center. The implications slowly dawned on Taro and the gathering Concordat officers. This wasn't just a defensive victory. It was the foundation for a counteroffensive that could end the war entirely. You planned this level of detail for a battle you learned about just days ago? Asked Chief Strategist Vorlon of the Concordat. Actually, said Ambassador Shin, who had been quiet until now, there's something we should explain. Shin nodded to a communications officer, who activated a secure channel. The main view screen showed Earth, not as it appeared in the first contact images, but a more comprehensive view revealing massive orbital shipyards and defense platforms that had been carefully hidden from initial scans. We detected your war 26 years ago, Shin explained quietly, long before either your forces or the hegemony noticed us. Silence fell over the command center as the Concordat officers processed this revelation. How is that possible? Taro finally asked. Our sensors never detected any signals from your region until Captain Park's discovery. Director Juan, Earth's head of intelligence, stepped forward. 17 years ago, one of our deep space probes detected unusual energy signatures consistent with massive space battles. We redirected more advanced stealth observation platforms and began studying both the Concordat and hegemony forces. You've been watching us fight for 17 years? Vorlon's voice held a note of accusation. We were a pre-FTL civilization observing a galactic war, Juan replied calmly. We had no means to reach you, no way to know which side, if either, would be friendly to Earth. So we did what humans do best, we prepared. The view screen shifted to show historical footage of Earth's rapid militarization and technological development over the past 2 decades, the construction of the orbital defenses, the conversion of civilian manufacturing to military production, and the training of space combat forces. Everything you saw today, continued Juan, from our tactics to our weapons systems, was specifically designed to counter hegemony technology and strategies based on our observations of your previous battles. The Concordat officers exchanged glances, a mixture of awe and unease in their expressions. So when Captain Park found Earth, began Taro. We were ready, finished Sung. We'd been ready for years, hoping we'd never need to fight but preparing as if war was inevitable. Lieutenant Kang, who had led one of the most successful boarding actions, added, what appeared to you as remarkable improvisation was actually the implementation of plans we've been developing and simulating for over a decade. Far from being offended by this revelation, Taro began to laugh, a buzzing sound that was his species' expression of respect. In all our history of space exploration, he said, we've encountered many civilizations, some warlike, some peaceful, but never one that observed a conflict from afar and prepared so thoroughly without revealing themselves. It's what kept our ancestors alive through countless threats, said General Choi. Watch, learn, prepare, then act decisively when the moment comes. The tactical displays continued to track the fleeing hegemony vessels as they regrouped at distant fallback positions, unaware that their every movement was being monitored. So what happens now? Asked Taro. Commander Wan touched her datapad, expanding the tactical display to show the entire sector. Now we go on the offensive. These tracking devices will lead us to their supply lines, their manufacturing centers, their command bases. For the first time, you'll be fighting a war with complete intelligence on your enemy's movements. And you'll help us? Asked Vorlon, still processing the implications. We're committed now, said Fleet Commander Han. Earth's safety depends on ensuring the hegemony can never threaten this region of space again. Besides, he added with a slight smile, Humans aren't known for leaving jobs half-finished. As the Concordat and human officers began planning the next phase of the campaign, medical teams throughout the fleet tended to the wounded. On the observation deck, a young human medic treated an injured Malusian pilot. "I don't understand your species," the Malusian said as the medic sealed a wound on his arm. "You fight with such intensity, yet now you treat enemy wounded with the same care as your allies." The medic smiled as she finished the bandage. "That's humanity for you. We contain contradictions. We can be your fiercest protectors or your worst nightmare. It just depends which side of the line you stand on." As the combined fleet began recovery operations, one thing became clear to every species present. The galaxy had changed forever. The arrival of humanity had shifted the balance of power in ways no one could have predicted, and it had taken them just 5 hours to prove it.